Hey people, Anthony 4x4 Diesel. A quick video. This is going to be the preliminary, right? It's to do with diffs and pinion seals and pinions and diffs and diff bearings and stuff like that. And soon I'm going to have another video or a couple of videos on lockers, including a discount at one supplier that I've managed to set up. Not a big deal, but you know what, it all adds up. So in this video, I wanted to punch this one out sooner rather than later to try and help someone out, because they've asked about the pinion seal on the diff and apparently it's leaking, and the mechanic, you know, I'm going by memory here, the mechanic said, oh, to replace the bearing. So I'm going to run you through some options to consider before you make a decision on what sort of repair you're going to do on a diff pinion seal. And obviously what we might do first is some ways to avoid that oil leak at the diff pinion seal, because personally I believe it's usually caused by a blocked breather on the diff. So you got to be careful what aftermarket breathers you install and what maintenance you do or don't do on your vehicle. And if you're watching our videos, a number of times I've shown people how to, on that rear diff, that little upside down cover, dust cover for the breather, how to make sure that's all clear by giving it a bit of a wiggle up and down and a twist and a pull and a shake around and blow some air and spray some brake cleaner and do a diff oil change, this sort of thing. And make, just if you're out on the tracks every weekend, you really need to be onto it, because if that gets blocked and it's blocked and it can't breathe, it puts pressure on things, and yep, you'll probably pop a seal, and it could be you know, it could be at the axle at the sides, or it could be the pinion. Now, so that's the first thing. Make sure you know what I'm talking about. Subscribe, turn the bell, and watch the videos. If you missed a lot of videos, then you've got some work to do to catch up, right? So that's what you need to do. When I'm busy and I forget to put a video out, you go, well, where's Anthony tonight? 7, it's 8, it's 9, it's 10. Well, where's Anthony tonight? By 10 o'clock, you should have watched at least a couple other videos in catch up, because if I miss a day, that's your opportunity to catch up. Now, with diffs, and if people don't know what we're talking about differential. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you've got no idea, you're going to have a Google around and have a look what a differential is, roughly what it does. Because we've explained it in other videos, and we're not going to explain too well again while we're driving down the highway trying to be really efficient, getting two things done at once. But basically you've got your pinion, if you know what I'm talking about. So that's the part the tail shaft or propeller shaft connects to, okay? And that turns that pinion. It's got a couple of bearings on it, depending what make and model, what vehicle. Generally, you're going to have either some shims at each end behind the bearings. You know, you've got to set your preload on the bearings, use different shims. It's pretty complicated. We're not going into rebuilding diffs in this video, and I'm certainly not the diff rebuild expert or anything like that, although I certainly know how to do it and can figure it out. Then you've got your, what I call the crown wheel, right? Crown wheel is the pinion, is the small one that turns the big one. That's your crown wheel. The crown wheel is bolted to the carrier. The carrier's got bearings on the side of it. And generally, diffs are just diffs. They're not automatic transmissions. They're not diesel fuel systems, and they're not that fussy. You know, like they'll go, oh, what oil? I mean, you've got to use the right oil, but you know, you can vary things a little bit. And generally, by having the wrong oil, generally it's not always going to cause a big problem. Like if you get a bit of water in there or a bit of whatever, it's not going to. It's just a crown wheel and pinion. You know, it's really quite big and it's really simple. Get some oil in there and it'll be happy. Now, if you've for whatever reason got a pinion seal, so that'd be up the front end. So say if it's a rear diff in a vehicle, full drive, because that's what we work on. So try and picture that for most people. Where the tail shaft bolts onto the pinion end of things, then there's probably a dust guard cover of sorts. In behind there's a seal, and behind that inside is where your bearing and everything is on the pinion. So you've got a pinion seal leaking a bit. Well, it depends how bad it is. If it's only very minor, it's only minor. It's probably not something to worry about. If it's not dripping and there's hardly anything there, monitor the situation. You might need to wash your vehicle a bit better, and I don't mean hit it with a pressure washer, but water, getting some of it in that seal. This is why high country river crossings are really actually good every now and then, because it washes out all that dirt and dust and stuff that got in there if you've gone down a track and you had to go through a bit of mud and bog holes. It sort of washes all that stuff out, because the dirt can work its way under the seal. That's another way that it wears the seal and damages the seal. Or grit can be that big that it holds the seal open and you get a bit of a sweat coming out, or it can actually damage that, you know, the yokes and stuff like that, if you like. So there's a few different scenarios there. The pinion, you know what I mean. I'm thinking about a few different scenarios, even on motor vehicles where there's slip joints on transmissions and all that. It's good to do maintenance, keep it clean, especially if you've got a four-wheel drive situation. Have a look underneath, see what the moving parts are, cleaning, lubrication, that sort of thing. So if it's leaking a little bit, or a little bit more than a little bit, you've actually got a drip there, it's annoying, it's dripping on your driveway and you want to do something about it, these are your options. Now, depending if it's shims, you're lucky. So first thing you need to do is work out on your make and model is if it's got shims or a crush spacer. Because if it's got shims, that's great, and if you can work out the torque specification, that's great. Or if you mark the nut, that's great. It's going to be pretty straightforward because you can take off your propeller shaft, you can take the nut off, and you can literally disassemble it enough to change that seal while it's all in the vehicle. Pretty straightforward job, let's say about an hour if everything goes to plan. And there's always a risk it might not go to plan, and more so with the crush spacer setup, which I'll get to in a moment. And you can just literally change that seal, nothing else. And there's generally no need to change the bearings. Now, if you've got a lot of play in it, and that's the cause of, so there's lots of different makes and models. So if you've got a crap vehicle and it's got a crap diff in it, or you've forgotten to put oil in there and you've just melted the bearings, then you're going to need to change the bearings. But sorry, I'm yawning. I just had a big lunch. It was beautiful. Hey everybody, we had the Indian today. You know, it's just awesome, and we took a couple of guests there, and they thought it was great as well, like most people do. I love it anyway. So it's really, I've got the carb attack going on. It sort of hit me a bit, but anyway, we'll stay awake long enough to do this video. But I am yawning. That's what's going on if I pause for a minute. And I don't care if I'm going off topic and we're talking about what we had for lunch today, because that's how we roll. So change the seal, put it in, clean it all up, keep it nice and square, don't damage it, use the right tools for the job, torque it back to the right specification or to the mark you put on the nut, put it back exactly how it was, and your problem could be solved. But like I said, if you've got damage to the bearings or whatever, you wouldn't have had an oil leak anyway if you had no oil in there, but I'm exaggerating. Do you know what I mean? If the cause is by the bearing, so if you check for play in the bearings, end play, side play, there's nothing there, there's probably not going to be, then you'll just probably get away with changing that seal. But you've got to find that cause again, have a look at that diff breather. Everyone's going out there to check their diff breather if they missed the last video. Okay, if you've got the crush spacer, okay, that's a bit different because that sets your preload as well, and you need to sort of, you know, I'm not going to go into it, it's a bit more complicated, and the point is, if, once again, at least 60, 70, 80% of the time, if you're good, you'll probably get away with it changing it in the vehicle, right? But you can't just torque it up again, okay? Because that's done, and now you've got old bearings and the spacers in there and blah, 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 whatever, and you're going to end up with maybe too much look, it's too complicated for me to think about while I'm falling asleep and trying to drive, but the fact of the matter is it can be done. If you mark with absolute accuracy, remove the nut and change the seal and then put it back how it was, there's a good chance you'll be okay. And that's a DIY seal repair. If you do it like that and you get lucky and take the time to clean things, get the quality genuine seal, put it in professionally, properly, you know, you doing that, taking your time. You can't get it done professionally most other places. Anyway, put it back and tighten up that nut to exactly where that, you know, you might want to put a number of marks and do them different ways so you've got absolute accuracy. Like I'm talking about a thin scribe mark, but you might want to have a backup paint mark. You might want to have a couple. Case one, there we go again. In case one wears off or something like that, right? So that's your quick, easy way to do a pinion seal. But then if you've done 300,000 or 400,000 Ks, you might go, well, it might be better just to do the diff rebuild and get new bearings and all that. So you just do the whole kit. You can get a kit. I'm not promoting anyone here really. You can go to your local bearing shop to get the 4 bearings you need, and then buy the seal from your Toyota dealer, add up, see what that adds up to. Or to be quite honest, those kits from Terrain Tamer, you know, Don Kide in Melbourne, I believe they've got equivalent of OEM bearings, so probably Koyo bearings, whatever, and which is the same as genuine, and in most applications I'll say, you know, I don't provide the parts. Nobody paid me to do it. Well, I'm just saying, you know, I'm just trying to help people. And the seal, I believe, so Terrain Tamer, they source the bearings. They've got an account probably with Koyo. They probably get them from Dandenong, places you can't buy them from because the amount they buy, and they put the kits together in their box. And I believe they get the NOK seals a lot of the time, which is the brand Toyota uses, so quality seals. And I can't guarantee that's what it always is, but if that's what it is, it's a really good kit, and if you get a bit of a discount on it, you might pick one up for about 140 bucks is about what they're worth. If you get that, not bad value for money. If you've got to pay 180, yeah, I don't know, you're better off just buying that seal from Toyota for 20 or 30 bucks and buying the 4 bearings from your bearing shop for about 100, because guess what, they just added up to about the same, right? There might be some other bits and pieces in that kit, but you probably don't need them. Anyway, but look, I don't know whether you do that yourself. It's getting as simple as diffs are, unless you do them every day. It's probably better to take it to a diff specialist, and even I did that. I'll give you an example on the 120, right? So I'll give you some background now. On the 120 Prado we have, we put the front locker in first, ARB. I let them do the job for 600 bucks because I think it's pretty reasonable value for money, the amount of work involved. That was back in 2014, and with a 5-year warranty, I don't have to touch it if I'm on a trip and there's problems. Well, I don't want to touch it, but you know how it ends up sometimes. So, touch wood, I don't think we've had any problems so far, but just stay tuned on 4x4 Adventures for more details on that. But basically, you know, you do it yourself or you pay someone. The rear diff, I put the locker in myself, so you know, pulled the diff out, pulled it apart, put that LOKKA 4-drive systems locker in there, worked really well, didn't have a problem with it. The vehicle was super capable with the front locker, and it really just went anywhere enough to wreck the vehicle by having front and rear lockers. So when that pinion seal leaked, and I believe it was me, I missed a blocked diff breather. If I remember correctly, I did miss that, yep, going out every weekend and during the day trips, and probably more off-road full driving than most other people you know. You know, I'm not bragging around, I'm just saying that's how it is, just fact of the matter. I missed it, I didn't put it up that weekend in between, or you know, you can't put your car on the hoist, but you need to get under to wash it, you need to reach in there, you need to check these things if you want to avoid that blocked diff breather, is what I'm trying to say. So that's what happened, and I went, well, should I, you know, I ummed and ahed, I was going to change a seal in the car, probably should have done it as R&D, and then I could have said a video and said, hey look, it worked, or hey, I did this and I thought I was good and I've marked it perfectly, and look, it didn't work. Now I've got problems with the diff because, you know, the preload was just a little bit off. To be quite honest, I think you'd be okay. Most of the time, most people are okay, and remember, most people aren't very good, so that means if you do a good job, you're probably 99 point all the nines after the point, probably going to be okay, but I can't guarantee it. I don't know, that's not something that we do a lot. We don't see a lot of pinion seal leaks. So this is a lot of information for that person that's got the problem and anyone else to consider. But what did I do? I went, well, I don't want the locker in there anymore because the vehicle goes too well. I actually wanted to make it a little bit harder. I wanted to be able to have a standard 120 Prado that I can take up those hills and go, yep, everyone behind me, without the lockers, if you pick the right line, you'll be right, and not have that rear locker in there that I couldn't control. So I kept the front locker, and that gets you out of trouble, as you can see in the videos on 4x4 Adventures, transforms the vehicle. So what I did was, we have a diff specialist, and for about 300 bucks, he's just cheap, right? I think that included, I think it was 350, including the bearings. So he quoted me 250 to put that locker in, even if I took him the whole car, not the diff center. And I went, wow, that's cheap, but I wanted the experience, so I did the job. It's just very cheap. It's a bit dearer because years and years later, I'm guessing it was about 2000, I'll say maybe around, would have been 18, 19, 17, 18, somewhere around there. So about 5 years later, when we had that pinion seal leak, I took the diff center out, even though the price was the same whether I gave him the diff or the car. Yeah, I know, crazy, isn't it? But I gave him the diff center because I trust me to put the axles in and out and everything else the way I like it done. I trust him enough to do the diff because he's a diff specialist, and that's what he does every day of the week, all day, every day, right? So someone that does that, he should be able to do the diff much quicker with his eyes shut. And maybe that's why he's cheap, you know? But he supplied the bearings, and he did the job. A couple extra shims, whatever you need to do to tighten up that LSD for me, thanks mate, because I want the LSD to work well, and we're currently still running the LSD in the back of the 120, and it works really well. The vehicle goes almost anywhere, unless for obviously when you're fully flexed up, and the locker transforms the vehicle. And of course, if you're in a situation that's that bad, you've got no traction, you're not going anywhere anyway. So got rid of the rear locker, pay the professional to do the job. If you can find someone to do it that cheap and get the job done right, you've done really well. I would say jump on it, don't risk it in changing that seal yourself. But if you're having trouble and they're all quoting you 800 or 1,000 or 2 grand, then I think for the fact of the cost of a seal and some of your time, it's probably worth it. So mark that nut, mark that pinion, mark everything up, Mickey Mouse, get yourself that seal from Toyota for 30 bucks, whatever it is, and get in there and have a crack. If you got, like I said, if you got bearing problems, you're going to have to bite the bullet. If you want to rebuild the diff yourself, you can do that. You're going to need to watch a lot of videos on YouTube, do a lot of homework, this sort of thing. Obviously, you're going to have to strip the whole diff down. You're going to have to, you're going to have to learn how to do a diff with a crush base, so you're going to need some tools that can be expensive, and that's where you start investing into that stuff, and it's better off to just pay the guy that's got the tools that does it every day, then you know it's going to be right, which is why that's what I did. We don't do diffs, we don't see diff problems much at all, but somebody asked a question, so that was the video, and I think I have yacked enough to give you all the information you need to hopefully understand and make the right decision if you've got a diff, oil leak, pinion leak, whatever the case may be. And we're going to have some more info, like I said, and some discounts on diff lockers and store content at, again, not one of our sponsors, just I said, hey, how about a discount? And they've offered something I'll talk about in a video coming your way soon, if it's not out already. Thanks for listening. It's up to you if you want to subscribe, but if you learned something and you like this video, hit the like button, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bada bing, bada boom, alright?